absence of Randy Pfeiffer, who has now resigned, I will be facilitating the meeting today. So good morning to our staff, our committee members, and visitors. Thank you for joining us today. We'll be calling this meeting to order. And just to be certain, Kendra, we have no one joining us by phone or WebEx today? Oh, good morning, Richard. All right, so Supervisor Gums is on WebEx, and we will have one staff member joining us later, also from CCIT on WebEx. Thank you. Again, good morning, everyone, and now that we've called the meeting to order, our next order of business is public comment. So I do believe we have some individuals that wish to address the committee today. And so as you come forward, we'll need your name, your address. What am I missing, Jim? Okay. So welcome for those of you that came to speak to the committee today. We'd like you to come forward. We should have one just for you, Judy, by now.
Soon,
I know.
Yeah, I know. He said I need a nameplate and a
Right,
desk.
right, yeah.
Okay. Y'all know I'm Judy Pagruczynski, address 226690 Blue Jay Lane, Ringel 54471. I am president of the Rural Riders ATV UTV Club based off of Eastern Marathon County. At the last meeting, there was some points of interest brought up as to hours of operation and where we can ride and all this kind of good stuff. The DNR book, which I guess Jim said all of you have in your packet, just explains the hours of darkness, which is the half an hour after sunset to a half an hour before sunrise. That doesn't mean that those are the only hours you can operate. According to the state statutes, it says that during hours of darkness, you have to travel in the same direction as the motor vehicle traffic. And during hours of daylight, it says you can travel in either direction, regardless of the flow of traffic. So I don't know if I'd want to travel against the flow of traffic, but it does state that it's possible in the state statutes. Also, everyone discussed which roads should be used and which ones shouldn't. As you all know, I think everything should be opened except for the really busy areas. And it's easier to close off sections than it is to open more and more and more. So in the state statutes, it also says that we can travel at a distance of 10 feet off of a pavement along any U.S. numbered highway, state, or county highway. Traveling in the ditch to me is not real safe. I think it would be a lot better to just drive on the pavement like everybody else does, because you have less chance of scooting up out of a ditch to go around a deep culvert or a deep ravine or whatever. So I'm in favor of opening the roads because of that also. And another point I'd like to bring up is, just lost my train of thought. I'm getting old. I can't remember what I was going to say. Blew my mind. Anyway, that's my point of view for today. So hopefully that'll help sway the committee. And overall, I think if it's publicized the right way, you shouldn't have any more problems than you do with any other type of vehicle that's out on the road. Our little scooters that go 45 miles an hour that you can barely see, they've been out there for years, and we're bigger than some cars, even a smart car, we're bigger than those. So, and they're allowed. So I think it's time that we get to use the roads that we're helping pay for with gas tax and tire tax and all this kind of good stuff. So, I remember now. As far as paying for all the signage, I think there's a way that you guys can probably figure out how to put on, like what the county did with their tire tax. I think you can probably figure out a way. I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I used to work for one, but I'm not one anymore. And by adding like a fee, a registration additional fee, but make it payable to Marathon County, give us a sticker that says we paid to use the county roads. We'll put it on our license plates. Otherwise, if it's a county ordinance, the county should be able to bill each township a certain amount for whatever signs go up in their territory. It's just another suggestion, so, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Judy. All right, we have another individual wishing to address the committee.
Carol Wesley, Achieve Center, 520 North 28th Avenue, Wausau. And I would like to address the issue of the 28th Avenue corridor expansion. I spoke with you last month related to this issue. And so I tried to give due consideration to opposite viewpoints. And so I've walked the route several times and have also driven County Road R several times, trying to figure out how fast are these cars really going and how fast would they be going past the schools and the daycare and the medical facility and our facility. And to be quite honest, I couldn't keep up with the traffic. When trying to go the speed limit, they were passing me left and right. On the bridge, on the part going over the Rib River, traffic backed up when I went the speed limit. As I walked through and up and down the proposed corridor, there's several things that I noticed. First of all, there isn't that much traffic on 28th that appears to be going through. Most all of the traffic coming in is a destination, which is the medical centers that are there. On Sunday, it's the church. School days, it's the school. Or coming to us during the week, which I really appreciate. When you walk past that area, you go into a residential area. I don't live that far from the proposed County R, and so speaking from a resident, I am concerned about that amount of traffic coming through a developing residential area. There's lots of new houses going up in that area, and the proposed corridor would slice right straight through basically new development. Which would be unfortunate for those of us who are living in that area. Additionally, it takes away some moderate income housing, which is really important to our community. There would be, I think, approximately 8 homes that would have to be removed. I think that's not a good idea in terms of the tax base for Marathon County and the city of Wausau. But most of all, I think about what is the function of this. And I thought about that a lot as I did my walking. What is the function of the 28th Avenue corridor if the traffic that's coming into the area is really coming into the businesses and organizations that are located basically in the center of it? What we really need is a functional road. 28th Avenue needs fixing. It's not in real good condition. But we need a functional street. We don't need a county highway. We need a functional street with sidewalks and bike lanes and safe intersections. The Aspirus Hospital campus, or Aspirus Corporation campus, the clinics, are spread throughout that area. And there's also clinics like ours, like the Achieve Center. And we are regularly, all of us are having to regularly cross 28th to go to the hospital, to go to other clinics, and sometimes it's not safe. Just because the way the intersections are set. You know, at some really busy intersections, we need stop signs, or we need better traffic control so that we can safely cross the road. We have individuals who come to our clinic who then go to other clinics, who take their children to other clinics, and sometimes they would like on a nice day to be able to push the stroller with the baby and to the next appointment. But they don't do that because there isn't any sidewalks. We need a quality road. We need an attractive road that is going to enhance our businesses, that are going to enhance our community. And so when people are coming into our community for the purpose of health care, and they come here for health care, they see a safe and attractive area, not a county highway where traffic is going so fast. I don't know what we will do in terms of being able to cross the street, if this becomes County Highway R. What is the function of the 28th Avenue corridor? Is it truly functional for us as a community? Is it functional for the road that we need, that should be required for us as businesses to be successful, but also for the safety of those individuals that are coming into our community, and for those individuals who utilize our services? This isn't a road that is good for us citizens as a community, and particularly those of us functioning in the city of Wausau. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Appreciate you coming today. So just one last call. Is anyone else here interested in addressing the committee?
Chair Seiler,
Oh, yes.
when the public is done, I have something. This is Supervisor Mask.
Oh, okay, thank you. Kendra, can you make sure I make note of that? And one more housekeeping note, because the screen isn't on for me, and because Supervisor Gums is on WebEx, can you let me know if he's wanting to participate at any time so that we make sure we have his input? All right, thank you and welcome.
Good morning, this is Kevin Clint, 126765 State Highway 153 in Stratford. I'm again with Judy about opening the hours of ATV traffic. From just in the aspect of everything on just business alone, on getting people in, especially during the winter months, it's going to be kind of hard to go to some of these businesses and get a dinner and everything that way on a Friday night when sun sets down at 4. The other thing is we'd like to open up the county roads just for the simple factor of corridors. We don't want the busy ones. We're going to take the path least traveled anyway, but we just need corridors, and it'd be easier to police if we open up everything instead of just little sections here, so we don't get lost on everything. The other thing is, I know that you guys were issuing about the cost of signs. Well, why don't we reach out to the community and ask for sponsorships of the signs and everything that way? That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. And once again, is there anyone, Supervisor Mask is on the phone? All right, Supervisor Mask.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Jean Mask. I represent District 24. My address is 277 Old Highway 51, Mosinee. Two things. I wasn't going to say anything about this, but I have had a lot of people, including businesses, say that they really want the county highways to open up to the traffic, the UTV, ATV traffic. And I know that I had expressed some concerns about the differences in speed limits, but there are other counties north of us that have had them open for some time and really haven't had an issue. More of the issues of accidents and deaths have been off-road. The other thing that I wanted to ask, and this is directed more towards Mr. Griesbach, Highway C has 2 bridges that are being worked on. I haven't been out that way now in 2 weeks, so I don't know if they're done yet. I've gotten a few complaints which of course, a lot of people complain about stuff like that, but it has to be done. But it is affecting some of the businesses out there, and it is in my district. I was asked if Highway X is going to also have bridge work this year, also closing that. So if you could inform me about Highway X.
Yes, the bridges on Highway C, they cannot start the bridge on Highway X until the bridges are done on C. The bridges on Highway C should be completed, barring any other setbacks, by the 20th of September. There is a deadline, I don't have that in front of me, about November 15th to have the Highway Bridge X done. The Zenith Tech had pulled off a couple crews. They brought them back, and once they started Highway X, they're going to be running multiple crews on the Highway X bridge, so that one should go a little faster than we've seen on the two Highway C bridges.
So X will be done yet this year.
Yeah, so be started right as soon as they're done on the C bridges, they'll be starting on the X bridge.
All right, thanks a lot. I appreciate.
All right.
That's all I have,
All
Mayor
right.
Seiler.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, last call. Everyone has spoken that wanted to. Okay, thank you again all for your input. With that, we'll move to number 3, approval of the minutes of the August 5th, 2021 Infrastructure Committee meeting. We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. The motion carries. Thank you. At this point, due to staff time constraints, we're going to be moving agenda items 6A and B up, and in place of CCIT Director Jerry Klein today, we will be having Network Manager Dale Schumacher present and give us report on the current status of their cybersecurity initiatives. So Dale, are you joining us by WebEx?
I am.
Okay, great. There, I can see you on the screen across the room. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate you having me. In case anyone is unfamiliar, thank you for the quick introduction. So I'm Dale Schumacher. I'm the network/infrastructure manager here at City County IT. Been with City County IT for about 4 years now, and part of my role is to formalize our cybersecurity program. So I've created a quick PowerPoint where I can highlight some of the main tenets of that program. I assume I can share from here. Yes. All right, can everyone see that well enough? Yes? No? Yes. I can't tell from here if that's showing up on your monitors. All right, I'm not sure if I lost audio or if no one is speaking.
Oh, we're just waiting to hear from you, Dale.
Okay, excellent. Just want to make sure you can see the PowerPoint that I was presenting.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. All right. So, right about the third quarter of 2020, we contracted with a company called Optiv. And the purpose of that contract was to hire a consultant. They are a virtual chief information security officer. We specifically selected a candidate named Sagnick due to his extensive experience in cybersecurity. And part of these slides are his, part of these are mine. The first thing that we needed to work through was to adopt the NIST CSF, which is the cybersecurity framework. What this does is it lets us break up our cybersecurity program into 5 specific.
Excuse me, Dale, could you
yes.
maximize the view on that? Can you go to the actual presentation mode?
I can try. It doesn't always work. Let me take a look here. So is that sharing correctly on your side? That better?
Not a lot, just Chair Robinson, he's got the best view, so what, has it increased at all? It's increased. I mean, Supervisor Robinson, yes. Okay. If that's the most you can maximize it, Dale, then we'll work with it, okay? Thank you.
All right, let me see something real quickly here. See if there's anything else I can do. I don't think I can make this any larger, so I apologize. And I cannot. Oh, trying. I'm sorry. All right, give me a moment. I apologize. I'm running with two monitors, so that makes this a little challenging. All right. So the first thing that we needed to work through was to align our security program to the NIST cybersecurity framework. This is a long established framework, and the main advantage to this is that it gives us the opportunity to break the security program into 5 specific areas. They are identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. And essentially the identify portion is when we look at what are our risks, what are the different things that we need to specifically evaluate. Protect, as the things here show, are things like awareness and training, part of what we're doing today, data security, the protective technology like the antivirus that you see on your PCs. Detection is the piece that we do in the background. That's our continuous monitoring, where we look at different threat actors trying to access things into our systems, etc. The response tenet is where we actually have the ability to stop those threat actors. It's this constant ongoing analysis of our vulnerabilities and how do we mitigate those risks based on the vulnerabilities. And then recovery is obviously something that is first and foremost in our minds when we look at malware and the fact that it may try to encrypt our files. How quickly can we recover? What types of programs do we have in place for disaster recovery, and what can we do to improve those areas? The next slide, I apologize, is going to be a little difficult to read. What we did is we have a long-standing committee within City County IT where we look at vulnerabilities and risk, different areas that we know we need to improve. And one of the things that we worked with our Chief Information Security Officer was to rank these so that we could determine what we needed to focus on first. And what we found is that identity and access management basically had our largest amount of risk. And as a result, that was the first focus starting in 2020 and moving forward into 2021. This document that I have here is just a small sample from the nearly 200 different things that we looked at that we started to address within the security program. Here on the next slide, you'll see that these are the same capability areas that I just reviewed. The differences here, what I've done is I've added some of those risks and highlighted in red the areas that we needed to focus on first. Our most important was in the protection area, and that IAM stands for Identity and Access Management. Who are you on the network and what should you have access to? The second piece was asset management. What devices, be that an IoT camera, an Echo Dot, be that a person that comes in and utilizes public Wi-Fi, what are we doing to identify those devices and ensure that they cannot do anything nefarious on our network? So based on that assessment, took about 6 months, we developed a plan, and I'll show you here where we are. What I'm showing here is the current security initiatives that we are currently focused on, broken out by the capability area, our key initiative. The status is a very simple green in progress. and a progress update. So right now, obviously, the one at the top of the list pertains to governance, and that is refining our policies and standards. We've contracted with a local company, Heartland Business Solutions. They have a lot of experience in policy development and standards development, and we just had our kickoff call with them last week. Hopefully, we will have that done by the beginning of 2022. Next piece here, and I apologize for the acronyms, MFA is multi-factor authentication. This is something we've done in the law enforcement space for quite a while, where somebody carries an individual token that gives them access to our systems. We've now extended that to our virtual private networking. So those are remote users working from home. We piloted with our internal group here at City County IT, and we'll be rolling that out to privileged users in the next 6 months. Next piece was local admin rights. An admin is an administrator, and we've worked to reduce the number of people that are administrators on their machines. If someone is not set up as an administrator, that means that malware can't be installed on their machine. So a really easy way for us to protect our systems. Also looked at inactive users. Those are users that are currently either through attrition or through vacation time, et cetera, are no longer active on our network. And we've set up scripts that automatically disable their account so they can't be taken over. Also looked at data discovery and classification. We purchased a new product called Varonis. Varonis looks at all of our files and then classifies them. It looks for, are we storing social security numbers? Do we have medical record information? Are we storing credit card numbers, et cetera? Data that obviously we would never want exposed inappropriately, and maybe more importantly, data that shouldn't be on our network. That product is now fully functional, and we've just started notifying departments that there are areas that we need to review and possibly remove that data. Looking at our network security, we've upgraded our Trend antivirus to a new style of antivirus monitoring. This type is much more proactive. It actually looks at interactions on the web and what the person is trying to obtain to make sure they don't go to nefarious sites, looks for malware in email, etc. Metrics and reporting is something I do with the City County IT Board. That board includes people from the City of Wausau, North Central Healthcare, and Marathon County. Our next piece is vulnerability management. So this is a product that basically allows some of these monitoring things to go on autopilot. Obviously at City County IT, we try to keep our staffing as lean as possible. The industry says I would need 8 security people if I was to fully monitor everything that happens on our network. That's not particularly cost effective to have 8 individuals here just to stare at screens all day. So instead, this Arctic Wolf program allows me to work with an outside vendor, and they're monitoring hundreds, if not thousands, of businesses for these type of vulnerabilities and activity, and then they take immediate action to remediate it. Physical security, we've determined that at this point we're in good shape thanks to our Genetech and door access systems. So no initiatives for 2021, 2022. And our incident response, malware protection. Obviously this has been probably top of mind for anybody paying attention to the security space. There's a lot of threat actors out there that have ways into your network, and they will encrypt your files and then charge you outrageous amounts of money to get access to those back. What we've started doing is taking our backups and we maintain them on site, off site on tape, and the latest piece here is putting them to a cloud-based storage, which allows them to be disconnected from our network and not accessible except when we need to restore them. So this gives us the ability to restore those files to any data center, not just the ones that City County IT currently maintains. The last 2 slides in here I will skip. They're more of internal City County IT. I appreciate everyone giving me some time to go over that. Hopefully it wasn't too dry. If there are any questions, I can take those if appropriate.
Right. Thank you, Dale. So does the committee have any questions or comments at this time for Dale or on the presentation? Supervisor Robinson.
So Dale, the last point relative to ransomware. So if we were hit like NTC was hit, What would that look like to us? How, given the changes that you've implemented, do we have the ability within a short period of time to be back, or how would we be impacted?
Sure. Appreciate the question. Great question. I hate to answer with the "it depends" answer, but in part that is a key factor. If we were to have a relatively isolated malware, so let's say it was one particular department, CPZ, for example, our recovery time is very short. We would have them operational within 4 hours, which is our normal SLA for that type of a system. If we were to look at a broader malware, let's say we had malware that was triggered by someone who had access to multiple systems, that time gets extended, not because of the speed from the cloud, but more a matter of where do we put that data. So when you look at recovery, it's one thing to have the data stored somewhere else. It's another thing to ensure that you have enough space available locally to restore that data. Typically, an insurance company will require you to maintain a copy of the encrypted data for their investigations, but you also need a secondary location to restore that information. That was one of the issues that NTC faced. They had essentially their entire infrastructure become encrypted, and they actually had to procure hardware in very short order. We've talked to numerous vendors to give us a timeline for that. So we could be in a situation where the restoration may be a week out for entire systems. And so we've developed a list of criticality. So things like payroll and things required to keep our significant systems moving would be first.
Thank you, Dale. Are there any other questions or comments? Commissioner?
Dale, Jim Griesbach, could you just forward me a copy of this presentation so we can upload it in our packet?
Yes, sir, will do.
That would be great. And Dale, did Jerry ask you also to do the updates for the CCIT or not?
He did not. He only asked me to present this
Okay.
particular presentation.
And-
But
and
thank you
that's-
for asking.
Okay, then that's fine, and thank you for that clarification. Well, thank you for being with us today, and to Commissioner Griesbach's request of having that available, that would be great, and then we can go in and look at it again. So thank you for being with us today, and thank you for your work. Okay.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye now. Okay,
Bye.
and with that, we're going to have one more agenda deviation, again, because we will be having a guest present. So Supervisor Robinson, if you would like to take up the 4C, the broadband project, and take care of that for the committee, please.
Thank you. We are joined today by Steve Schneider from Bug Tussle. While he's walking up, I'll just give a little background. As you know, we've been working with a number of internet service providers and on Public Service Commission grants and other funding sources. We have, over the last year, been working and having communications with Bug Tussle with a submittal to the Public Service Commission in December of last year, as well as one in July of this year. They have taken a lot of the work that was done by Design 9 and looked at trying to develop a combination of wireless with some fiber backbone to try to expand services throughout most of the county, not all. We continue to work with them. And we will have before us as a county board later this month a resolution calling for adoption of an initial resolution to do borrowing on behalf of Bug Tussle to allow that system to go into place. And I'll turn it over to Steve and perhaps have some comments at the end of his presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, John and Ms. Chairman, Chairperson. I just want to first cover a couple of the main objectives of the program. Number one is to get at least 25 megabit per second service to as many people as possible in the county who aren't covered today. And we do that with fixed wireless. We can actually provide up to 100 megabits per second, generally 25 megabits for somebody doing 3 or 4 Zoom calls at a time is adequate. So that is a project that we've been working on for the last year and a half at this point. A number of towers are already constructed, a number are being constructed, and so that's point number one. Point number two is to get a middle mile fiber that can connect homes into a fiber to the home or fiber to the business network. And so that particular program would be a ring throughout the whole county. We've worked with county staff on designing that to pick up all of the E911 towers, other critical locations to connect into the county's existing fiber network at the appropriate locations. So it really expands the footprint of what the county has extensively. We would be providing 24 dark fiber for the county's use at no cost to the county for those 24 fiber. The only caveat is that it not be provided to competitors of ours. Obviously, we don't want to pay for something for the county that someone else then comes in and competes against us with our own fiber. We also have as key to our whole program the fact that this is an open network, so we are not only sharing the network design with the community and with our competitors, we are encouraging people to use that network, and perhaps the most immediate use could be people who've received designation as an RDOF provider, Rural Digital Opportunity Fund. There's about $6 million that has been allocated from the federal government to build out areas that have been mapped as not having any type of broadband service. In Marathon County, that's primarily a company called LTD Broadband out of Minnesota, as well as a charter. We are working extensively with LTD Broadband to assist them to use our middle mile network on that portion of it. We would offer the same program to charter should they need or desire that, as well as to other providers who may be interested in getting fiber to the home. One of the other things is where we are doing middle mile, one of the things that really angers consumers is when a fiber line runs past their home, but they can't get access to it. And so what we're doing is what we're putting in as middle mile, which is typically that fiber that goes by but doesn't stop. We're setting aside 72 fiber in that sheath to do fiber to the home where the middle mile goes. So wherever we're putting that aggregation fiber, if you will, we will also be providing fiber to the home day one. That will be a minimum of 1 gigabit per second service. Right now, we are looking at what's called an XPON technology. A lot of people are using GPON. It's passive, but it gets up to 10 gigabits per second. So we would be able to market rate plans up to 10 gigabits, but the standard would be 1 gigabit. Usually people ask, well, how much is it going to cost me for a gigabit? We're looking at something, the 25 megabit fixed wireless, we're doing $50 a month. The gigabit, we're looking at somewhere between $65 and $75 a month would be the pricing for that. On top of that, if you're getting some type of cable TV service, that would be in addition to the core internet, but the core internet. I'm on Spectrum outside of Green Bay in a township served by Spectrum, and I'm paying $215 a month for my cable TV and my internet, and then it goes out during Packer games because they don't have enough bandwidth. So I think our offering is pretty exciting. One of the other things that we do that I haven't talked about a lot to the various committees here that I've presented to that we're really amping up. In fact, I have 2 interviews tomorrow with former teachers. We are also kicking off an expanded what we call Bug Tussle University, which are free community programs where people from the community, as well as our employees, participate in educational sessions. Those range across a really broad spectrum. Two of the more popular ones where we've rolled this out are computing for seniors, where, somebody, has a computer, they're sort of afraid of the technology and how to use the internet. On the other end of the spectrum, a very popular one that we've tapped into some college professors is artificial intelligence and autonomous vehicles. Anybody who says that autonomous vehicles are a long ways away haven't looked at a Walmart lately, or an Amazon distribution center, or I have a tenant in a building I own in Green Bay who services roughly 1,800 autonomous vehicles in the city of Green Bay today. Now, the autonomous vehicles today tend to be cleaning machines that, clean a Walmart after hours and operate on their own. It tends to be warehouse delivery, quite a number of options. So the core project that we're doing will cost somewhere between 20 to 25 million overall. A lot of companies come and ask for a grant or a gift or a loan. We're sort of going the other way, and what we're saying is what we need is long-term financing, because these assets last 30 years, 50 years, 100 years when you're talking about glass in the ground, fiber optics, when you're talking about towers. So what we do is we provide the county 40 basis points a fee to use their credit rating to issue bonds. They are conduit bonds, meaning upon issuance, the responsibility passes to us. And then for whatever is outstanding, we pay you 40 basis points. That 40 basis points over the term of the bonds for Marathon County, we would be paying Marathon County $1.55 million approximately. So then the question is, well, what's the catch? The catch is that the county is guaranteeing the debt service recovery fund during the term of the bond. So we put on deposit from bond proceeds 1 year's payments, and then every month we replenish. If we fail to replenish that bond sinking fund, if you will, for any 12 months, then the county would have to put the next month's in. In exchange for that, the county gets a first lien on all of the assets that we build in the project in the county. And I know the attorneys have been working back and forth on language on that. I think that was one of the issues that came up yesterday is Quarles and Brady would like it to be in a separate entity from the rest of our operations, and I'm fine with that. It isn't the way we did it with Fond du Lac when we did this back in 2012, but I'm fine with that. We have a history with this. We did this in 2012 on a shorter term bond, a 12-year. We never missed a payment. The bond rating went from BB2 to AA1 over the course. The project was done on time, it was done on budget, and we never missed a payment since the bonds were issued in 2012. A little bit about our company. We as a company last year had about 65 million in revenue, and we had net income of about 19 million. So we are financially strong. We have a net worth in the neighborhood of 40 million. We have what they call a business enterprise value, which is what the company is worth net of debt of about $160 million. So we are not a fly-by-night or undercapitalized company. There are three primary shareholders in our company. Those are myself, an individual by the name of Paul Gale. Paul was the former principal of Lunda Construction. He sold Lunda Construction to Tudor Perini a number of years ago for significant dollars. And another individual by the name of Robert Eddy from Minnesota, who had owned a cellular operation that he sold for several $100 million to Verizon a number of years ago. So the three of us make up about 75% of the ownership of the company. we are looking at a financial model that focuses first on aggregating existing traffic at cell towers, and second, of picking up fiber to the home throughout the county. We are primarily focused in the rural areas, but this will also affect the city significantly because we will be providing routes to other counties outside of Marathon. We'll be connecting into Shawano County, we'll be connecting to Taylor County, we'll be connecting down to Madison through a series of counties to the south. And our goal is to have roughly 25 to 30 alternate routes because largely the networks that have been built today are what I call ad hoc networks. So there's a bunch of customers over here, so we ran fiber over here. We had a need to get from here to there, so we ran fiber from here to there. And at any point you cut those, even though some of them are on rings, one cut or Murphy's Law, 2 cuts in a single day means that people go without service. If you have 20 to 30 alternate routes outside of the county and outside of your network, it provides tremendous resilience. I'll tell you there's an ulterior motive as to why we're doing that. We are doing the National Public Safety Network. We're a subcontractor to AT&T on that. And those are part of the federal requirements for FirstNet is that we have multiple locations to go out to so that there are not outages. The goal isn't 5 nines, the goal is 100%. That's what FirstNet in every presentation they do tells us as a provider is 5 nines isn't good enough, which is the old telecom standard. With that, I've got more I can go through, but I think I had 10 minutes allocated, so I don't want to bore you. I know a number of you have been on various committees that I've presented to, so I'll, with that, open it up to questions from the committee.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Steve, thank you very much. I want to just point out a couple of other things. First of all, the focus on a fixed wireless has a few advantages. It gets service out quicker, and also with the construction of the new towers, we expand cell coverage in the area, which was a critical need that we identified in March of last year. And they will have room on those towers available to us should we need to use that. Last week, Jerry Klein and I, along with representatives from CCIT and the Sheriff's Department, met with Steve and his technical staff to look at the routes. It's an ever-changing route, but the purpose of that was to try to see if we could capture critical locations such as schools, town halls, our towers, and collaborate on those. And it was a very fruitful meeting, and they've agreed to some modifications to the route to accommodate some of our critical needs. The issue is currently being reviewed by bond counsel for us, Quarles and Brady. We received the template or the initial resolution that was passed by Fond du Lac County. What this will be is an aggregation of the various counties that are interested in it going together on one issue, similar to something that we did with Foremost Foods in Appleton 10 plus years ago. So we have precedent for it. We're just trying to make sure that we are indeed protected should, for some unforeseen reason, they go bankrupt, and we would be able to maintain our equity position in it, and that's what bond counsel is looking at, and their attorneys are working with Mike and Quarles staff. The issues before us today for asking for an endorsement of the concept, it will go to the HR Finance and Property Committee next Thursday at a special meeting, and then to the county board at the informational meeting, and ultimately for action later this month. Steve is making himself available to many of the committees of the county just to explain what's going on. We will need a 3/4 vote to pass this initial resolution, and we're again trying to make sure that the guarantees are in place satisfactory to our bond counsel and financial advisors. So it's been an interesting process.
Okay, so for clarification, as Chair of the Broadband Task Force, Supervisor Robinson, do you have a request of the committee today, or is this simply for presentation that we could hear from Steve and ask questions? What is your desire?
We are requesting that if you are comfortable, that we make a recommendation that the county consider entering into or adopting an initial resolution subject to approval by bond counsel and financial advisors.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Supervisor Dickinson.
One question on the collaboration that you were talking about last week. Are municipalities included in that at all, or was that just a smaller group internal to the county?
The meeting last week was, at that time, was exclusively the CCIT, but we were looking at the town and school facilities along the route. I think that there's always opportunities for us to expand that. We did look at the connection within certain communities.
Our intent is to reach out to every township that the fiber goes through or near to get their input on where it goes, and we do that as part of the final engineering study. The other thing we've done is we got a list from the state of ARPA dollars, because we're getting a lot of calls from townships saying, hey, we want broadband and we want it today because this is really affecting our township considerably. And so, we are, strategizing right now how we put together the resources to reach out to every town in the 12 counties that we're working on right now. But it is certainly our intent to work with the towns. The towns are sort of where we grew up and started, to be honest, because my background was on a dairy farm and we could never get service that city kids got. And that was always, so our vision statement is to create a level playing field for rural areas. And that's, not a negative toward urban areas. It's just with what we live with today, you should be able to do the same things in downtown Chicago as you can in a township in Marathon County. So I think that, from our perspective, the big companies are going to serve the city of Wausau, but the townships are where our bread and butter is. So we're definitely going to get input from the townships.
Okay, Supervisor Christensen.
Thank you. I'd request that Supervisor Robinson make the motion so that it's worded correctly. Could I ask that?
I can make the motion if that's what you're asking.
Yes, please.
I would move that the Infrastructure Committee endorse the broadband proposal put forth by Bug Tussle, subject to the concurrence of bond counsel and our financial advisor.
Okay, so we have a motion. Is there a second? We have a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, what is your pleasure?
Aye.
We have aye? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so the motion carries. Thank you very much. And thank you, Steve, very much. That was very informative. Thank you for being here today. All right. So thank you for that. And with that item of business taken care of, we will now move to agenda item 4A, review of right-of-way corridor along 28th Avenue, potential sale, acquisition. And we have 30 minutes allotted for that, and we'll have the commissioner give us all the information we need to know.
Thank you, Sandy. So what we put together, I shouldn't say we, County Planning and Zoning, Mr. Mack and Andy Lynch put together a purpose and need, what was included in your package. I'm just going to tee it up a little bit and tell you what we put together and where we've gone since our last meeting. Included in your packet and on the wall here today is a map that was provided for you showing the corridor, the original layout. The salmon color is what the existing right-of-way that would still need to be purchased. And you can see kind of where it jogs out in a few different locations of parcels that we have purchased, probably dating back to about 2002. So those parcels are already purchased. There's about a dozen of them that I went back in the records and found that we've purchased through the years. The majority of those parcels are on the southern half of this, south of West Wausau Avenue. where the road kind of curves, and south of Wausau Avenue on 28th Avenue, that's the steep hill that we're trying to get around with this corridor map. Also, since the last meeting, we have been in contact. We had a meeting with...
Excuse me, Commissioner, can we have the map up on the screen?
Should be.
In the corner, okay. Is it possible, okay. Is it possible to enlarge that at all, Jim? If not, okay, but just make it easier for folks.
Keep going down.
Okay, so Kendra, Supervisor Johnson just indicated if we go down a couple slides from the one you had up, we should be able to get what we need.
Should be coming up.
Okay, great. That would help everyone.
Scroll down. A little bit more. So the area that is displayed on the screen right now is the area that I'm speaking about where most of the parcels have been bought. We sat down last week with Eric Littman from the city of Wausau, talking about what their needs are and what our needs are, and we haven't come to a full conclusion. But we did have the conversation about, you know, does the city of Wausau at some point maybe want to just take a look at 28th Avenue, and that location is not in the greatest shape, and, you know, what's their future plans? Would they want to maybe use this corridor for the realignment of 28th? So Mr. Lindman is here today from the city of Wausau. I know they have a public works meeting coming up next week. I believe it is on their agenda. Next month, okay. So it's a little ways out yet. Also, again, Dave Mack and Andy Lynch had put together the purpose and need. They've reached out also to the Village of Maine that is here today, so they can join us in this conversation. But maybe at this point, I'll let Dave and Andy kind of go through what they put through for the purpose and need, and the history that we kind of covered a little bit last week, and where we're going forward, and what questions need to be answered here, so to give us staff some direction of where we should be going in the future with this.
I'm going to take this off. That'll be easier. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Ms. Chair. Again, my name's Dave Mack. I'm the planning manager for conservation planning and zoning for the county and the director of the Wausau Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. Back 20 years ago, that group, the MPO as it's called, put together a plan which was called the Local Arterial Circulation Plan. And in that plan, there was a concept of how the local roads could be improved throughout the whole metro area to create better flow and efficiency. And in your packet, I have a map of that. I think, Kendra, if you go up a couple of slides, you might be able to show that on the screen. It's got the red lines on it. A little bit further up than that. So in that plan back 20 years ago, we talked with all the communities in the metro area and talked about how they would want to create a system of roadways, I guess, using mostly the existing system to enhance the traffic and how it flows throughout the metro area. That's the one there. And in that process, it created, interestingly, a ring around the metro area. And it was being talked about as this loop around the area with a lot of additional roadways going inside, like a kind of a wheel and spoke system, into the more of the core areas of the metro. And this loop was one of those concepts that back then, like I said, this was back in 2000, the county was talking about being the steward of that ring around the metro area. We had been talking for a lot of years about an east side bypass on Camp Phillips Road. There was talk of doing some kind of a southern loop, if you will, going from the Rothschild-Cronenwinter area, looping around what is the Cedar Creek area to the east to get into the village of Weston. And as part of this process, when the Highway 51 corridor was being created, we were also working on what is now County Highway R in Rib Mountain. And most of that work on that project was to deviate traffic off of Highway 51 through the area and get it onto the local system. And part of this process was to look at the local system and how we're moving traffic throughout. So then part of that process was then looking at the northwest corner of the metro area, which 28th Avenue is in, and looking at how to move traffic that would be coming from the northwestern part of the county and even further north up into the Merrill area or north further down into the city proper, not utilizing necessarily the 51 corridor. At that time, the Department of Transportation was very cognizant of wanting to make sure that local traffic stayed on local roads and that the main freeway traffic was to move traffic through the area. And so that's what we were looking at doing at that time. And so that's kind of the start, the impetus for creating this 28th Avenue corridor. Since then, time has changed a little in the last 20 years. And the development that has occurred on this particular map, a lot of it has not occurred, if you will. The East Side Bypass and Camp Phillips Road, we as the county have built some of that roadway through the village of Weston, but everything north of, say, kind of Northwestern Avenue, around the northeast side and maybe crossing the river on the north has not taken place. We were engaged in a project to do that southern loop between the three villages. They decided to not pursue that any further, and so that southern loop was scrapped. And so really right now that loop concept really only has County Highway R as part of that concept. But the communities themselves within the area have looked at all of these roads that in their own communities and have taken steps to improve some of that roadway that are in there. So some of these roads have been completed and some of them haven't. But the whole idea of creating this county loop has pretty much gone away. I don't believe that the county has actually taken any official action to say yes or no that we were going to endorse the loop, but it was the concept back then. And that's why the county was involved with the planning process in the early 2000s to enhance and redo the 28th Avenue corridor. In your packet, some information we have for you. Right now, the traffic on 28th Avenue, and 2019 is the last count? Yeah, so 2019, we had a traffic count on 28th Avenue of 1,900 cars per day, or the average annual daily traffic. And back in 2008, there was a forecast done for that segment of roadway that showed that in 2019, we would have 3,000 cars. And so the forecast from in the past shows that we have not reached that potential or that forecast in that area. And we just recently have done another forecast this year for the whole metro area, and we show that that corridor would be about 5,000 cars a day 30 years from now in 2050. And so right now we haven't even reached what we've said we were going to reach, and we project even further out, 30 years, the numbers that we thought we were going to get now. Just for comparison, a couple of examples in here that we show you of traffic of 5,000 cars. County Highway N going west from the freeway out towards the Ski Hill area has 5,200 cars a day. Northwestern Avenue in Wausau has 5,600 cars a day. And County Highway X down in Kronewetter has a part down by where XX and X meet has 4,900 cars. So at that point, you can see the comparisons of how those roads are functioning today with the traffic that they're holding. And we're not looking to see that kind of traffic on 20th Avenue until 2050. Also, safety, we looked at some of the safety components. Right now we're looking at an average of one injury crash per year over a 5-year time frame. So there isn't a lot of incidents. The one main concern, and I know that the city is concerned about this, is that the grade or the slope of that roadway on 28th Avenue on the hill is at 19%. So it's very steep, hence the acronym STEEPY, the localism for that road. So I just wanted to just add a couple of things that may have changed this since we started talking about this 20 years ago. Like I said, that loop concept has not materialized, and so there was a concept of having a bridge across the Wisconsin River on the north side of the community, and it was being looked at the time of Evergreen crossing over to Decatur on the west side, and potentially connecting with Highway 51. Since Highway U and K interchange has been rebuilt, the concept of having a connection into that Highway 51 corridor really close to that U and K interchange is probably not going to materialize. So that concept seems to be going away. The level of development in that County K-U interchange area and a little bit west has not materialized like we thought it was at the time. Right now, there's not, the city has sewer and water services, the village does not in that area, and so there's issues there with potential development, specifically with a commercial retail that both communities are looking to have in that area, aside from some large lot residential development. So the growth potential is right now probably not the highest because of the questionable where they can get sewer and water for some of the developments. The actual building of the U and K interchange area has changed the way you get back onto the freeway system from the County U corridor. It's kind of a misdirection, if you will, to go easterly on U and get onto the freeway. And so going northbound, you have to go up Overlook Drive and get around, and it's maybe not as understandable by the public when traveling through that area. So those are some of the changes that have taken place. Also, some of the traffic patterns have changed because of the freeway project that's been done. A lot of people are using the Bridge Street interchange to get to the hospital complex and parts to the west, and not using U as much when you're staying inside the Wausau city proper. And so some of those changes have taken place to account for the sparseness of the development that's occurred in that particular area. Did you want to add anything else, sir?
So also included with this in the packet, there is an original document we found from probably 2003. It's titled 28th Avenue Project, and this also can kind of fill in some of the historical gaps. It does detail kind of the alternatives that were considered for the route around the hill for 28th Avenue and the public input that took place with that. So, and then on top of that, we also back in 2009, the County Highway Department had a cost estimate done for part of the section from West Hill Drive to U, and at that time it was just above $8 million to do that section. And in the report, we've included what would probably be a current year cost of near $10 million. So it would not be straightforward to just go around that hill. But no, basically, I think what would be, best for county highway staff is to be able to answer some of these questions and get some direction on going forward with this corridor.
Okay, thank you, Andrew, Dave. So it's back to Jim to wrap this up, or Andrew, Dave, do you have more of your presentation? No. All right.
Happy to answer questions.
All right. So you've heard presentations from Andrew and Dave. Do you have any questions at this time? on this. Supervisor Robinson.
So we still don't have input. We have the issue before this committee of whether we would continue to designate this as a corridor for the county R. But then we have the corresponding issues of whether the municipalities, the city and the village have interest in upgrading that road and what their right-of-way commitments are and or will be in the future. And you know, even in the comments in the public, you know, in the public comment period by Carol, were that there's a need for sidewalk and potentially bike lanes and other things. So we need to know what we're going to do in that area before we start deciding what we might do with existing right-of-way. So how are we going to coordinate this? And, you know, the county is one of 3 entities involved in this. So how do we resolve this so that the county doesn't walk away from it only to have somebody else officially map it as well and continue to create that uncertainty? Do we have a process or a schedule by which we will advance this and try to get those communities? I know that it's on the agenda for next week for the Metropolitan Planning Organization to talk about, but we need to get some certainty to the people, Carol and other people that are along the route. And the county can take one action, the city can take another action, and you may not have any resolution. So how do we have a process?
I believe the process needs to happen is, starting at this committee, if we would like to continue the original plan, we will discontinue the original plan of making this a corridor and going to County Trunk Highway R all the way up to Highway K. If this committee decides that, okay, we do not want to continue this should not be designated as a county trunk highway, then we will start the next process of talking to the city and the village of Maine of what their plans are for the road and turning what they would like to see in the future before we would abandon that corridor. If the city would love to say, okay, let's just throw it on, for example, they would say, yes, we'd like to use your corridor to rebuild 28th. If you're not going to build County Trunk Highway R, then we can start that conversation. But we can't start any of those conversations until this committee decides what we're going to do with the existing corridor and if we're going to continue the process that we're doing right now.
Okay, Supervisor Johnson and then Supervisor Christensen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's kind of painfully obvious that this ring and this corridor, just the need for it just has not come to pass as projected. That's what I'm hearing. Correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, but that's what I'm seeing. Obviously, I wasn't involved back in 2003, 4, 5 when this was developed. But the growth hasn't occurred there, and the need is not there. And there have been other factors, such as West Hill Drive being upgraded to the point it is where that's become an artery in that area, that I think it's incumbent on us to recognize the reality that it's not going to happen. And at a minimum, say that we're not going to use that as a county highway corridor. And as Mr. Griesbach just said, we need to take that action first before other municipalities, Village of Maine, City of Wausau, enter into the equation. Because as long as we have it designated as a county highway corridor, am I correct, we can't have those conversations because it's county highway corridor or projected county highway corridor. Is that correct, Mr. Griesbach?
Yeah, I wouldn't have those conversations with anybody until I have some direction that we do not want to continue this process that we're currently had set back in 2002.
Right.
So, yes, that would be correct. In my opinion, we would need to have that conversation at this level before we continue on with anybody else.
Well, I think it's kind of painfully obvious that it's not going to be necessary in the next 20 years to build this corridor. By the projections, which say in 30 years we're going to be up to 5,000 cars a day. Still not justification for holding on to this and creating the uncertainty, quite frankly, of the businesses that are in that area right now. and some of which, at least one of which, we know wants to expand but is holding back because of the uncertainty. So I think it's kind of incumbent on us to make a decision to no longer pursue that designation as a county highway corridor. And then we can, as you said, have the conversations on what to do with it and what the best use of that land going forward by the other municipalities would be. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we have Supervisor Christensen next, and I think Supervisor Robinson also would be in queue.
Thank you, excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would make the motion that we abandon this and turn this over to the other municipalities if they are interested in this. Is that okay now?
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second, and then we can continue the discussion. Supervisor Robinson?
I don't have a problem with that concept in its time, and I respectfully disagree with Commissioner Griesbach relative to the timing. I think we can begin those discussions while we continue to have it mapped. One of the reasons, Supervisor Johnson, that I would like to see it stay with the county is that the acquisition cost would be borne by the county, and the county doesn't pay for any roads in the city. This is a way for us to leverage county highway dollars for the benefit in the city, should that right-of-way acquisition be needed, even with a city road. So I would encourage you to give some thought to that concept. And again, the issue for the businesses located on there is not resolved if we decide to walk away from the corridor. It is resolved when the local units of government determine what their long-term plans are. So the sooner we get to the long-term plans, and I think we can have that with the county highway commissioner and the public works director and the village administrator, trying to do that sooner. I drove that route yesterday. You get north of Wasay Avenue, and it is narrow. It is a very narrow road, and there is residential development happening there. I think we want to protect that corridor. The reason you map it is to protect for future development, so you keep your options open and you don't have houses located within that corridor. So I think that we could begin those discussions with the village and the city before we abandon our corridor, and it would keep funding options, all funding options for that corridor acquisition open going forward.
Okay, Supervisor Dickinson?
So I agree with all of you. And here's you like that for once, right? I think my perspective is this: the way it's set up right now, the corridor, is obviously something we're not looking for as a county to go forward with. More acquisitions, no. Expanding the road, no. Spending $10 or $12 million on that project, no. I think we all agree on that. I think they get into the weeds when you say, how do you develop that road, or what do you do with that road at this point? Is it the county's responsibility? Is it the city's responsibility? And so in that regard, I agree with Supervisor Robinson that we should have a mindset to be working together to do what Carol had spoken about as well, as making it a functional street that fits in with everything that those community members want and is good for the entire overall community. So however that fits into the motion and the second, and not going forward or going forward, that's my mindset with that. There you go.
Thank you for that, and perhaps now we need some more clarification from the commissioner on this.
That's kind of where I was going with this, Bishop Robinson, is that we're not going to, my thing is we don't want to abandon it, but before we want to sit down and make a plan with the village and the city, I need to have some direction from this committee, say, yes, we know this road needs some type of improvement, but I'm not going to sit down with the city and the village without knowing that at some point we may be interested in turning that corridor over or keeping the corridor for some type of expansion. But is it our expansion, is it the city's expansion, or is it the village expansion? Without direction right now, I'm under the direction right now, according to what's in place, that it's a county road. It'll remain a county road until I've been told different by this board.
Okay, so are you wanting to speak again, Supervisor Robinson?
And from a point of clarification, Jim, this, we haven't designated that as County R yet. So there's no jurisdictional transfer that's occurring, correct? So until we designate that as a county trunk highway, we don't have an obligation going into the future to develop it or upgrade it with the concurrence of the city of Wausau in the village of Maine.
The corridor map is, I believe, Mr. Mack can help me on this one, but I believe the corridor map is in Marathon County's name at this point. So the corridor map itself is within our name.
But my question deals with the issue of jurisdictional transfer of the road.
At this point, the jurisdiction is both in the village and the city yet.
Okay.
Mr. Mack's got
Madam
his
Chair,
hand up.
yeah,
there.
maybe I can help. Back in the day, whenever that was, 2002, I think, we officially mapped the corridor as a county. Officially in the record of deeds, this map exists so that we have the ability to purchase that property. The city has also gone ahead and done the same, if I'm not mistaken, in the city limits. That same corridor has been established for the city for planning purposes, that if in fact there needs to be a road built in that area, the corridor would be preserved for future road expansion. And I'm not sure if the village has done anything north in their community at this point, but at that time it was the town, and it was probably going to be working with the county to work on those considerations. On the,
We had agreed with the county, we worked with Gwen Spike at the time, and we were keeping all the properties, I think it was an additional 75 feet back from.
It was really to protect the corridor in case we had a future need for it. That's the purpose. But John, I think if I get to your question, there isn't the jurisdiction of a county highway established in this corridor at this time.
Okay, thank you. And Supervisor Johnson, once more.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a point of clarification with Chairman, with Mr. Griesbach. Would it suffice to have a statement of intent that this committee has no intention of building a bypass or a corridor through the projected route? Would that allow you the leeway to start those conversations?
I'll look at Corp Counsel.
Because it seems like, once again, painfully obvious, we're going to abandon it eventually. It's going to happen.
Correct.
We're not going to keep this ring around the metro area as an official plan. That's not going to happen. But right now, what you need is the ability to speak to the other municipalities that have an interest along that corridor. Is that correct?
Correct, that's the question, and according to Corp Counsel, that would be fine. Again, I'm just looking for some direction. Do I even
Right.
do we even start those conversations, or we just keep going as is?
Well, that's a question. And there he is, the Corp Counsel. So in your opinion, would we be able to start those conversations with a simple statement of intent that we are not going to be developing that, or do we need to be more formal in our designation?
I think a statement of intent would be sufficient because it gives the highway commissioner guidance from this committee as to what direction, as far as policy goes, you have directed him, and then he would be able to carry that out with further discussion. So I think it would be sufficient.
Okay, and that would, unfortunately, for Carroll and the other businesses in that area, that is still going to be an issue if we do go forward, that the city is going to decide then, because it is within the city of Wausau. But it would definitely give her assurance that there's not going to be a county road, a county highway running in front of her business, because that is not, I'm hearing that's not the intent of anyone in this room, that they want to see that happen, that it's not practical, it's not needed, quite frankly. So I think perhaps if the motion were withdrawn and we just passed a statement of intent to allow Mr. Griesbach to get started, that would allow him to do his job and move us down the road towards finding resolution with this. It would also provide the confirmation to the local businesses in the area that we're not going to designate this as a county road. It's not going to happen.
Okay, so with those
So
clarifications.
With that, yeah, I mean, I would take Supervisor Christensen to withdraw and.
Supervisor
we'll go that
Christensen?
Yes, thank you. I guess that was my intent, was that not to sell this directly, but to give Commissioner Griesbach the chance to talk, to go ahead and start the conversations, that we're not going to just go out and sell everything and be done with it. But I guess that was my intent.
Okay, so you are in favor of withdrawing your, as is Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
There, okay, so the motion has been withdrawn, and now we are back to the direction, and I heard from, sounds like Supervisor Johnson has some thoughts on that.
I move that we direct, or that we make our intent publicly known, and to Commissioner Griesbach, that we have no intention of designating this as a county road corridor. And that should be sufficient to give Commissioner Griesbach the ability to start negotiating.
Okay, thank you,
Or
Supervisor.
speaking with other entities.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion, is there a second? We have a second from Supervisor Christensen and Supervisor Robinson.
I would move to amend the motion to direct staff to develop a plan for the county to, working with local units of government relative to official mapping, because official mapping of that area, and report back to the committee within 6 months.
Okay, so we,
And if I get a second, then I'll discuss that. The reason for offering the motion is that we still have the county on, you still have the county on an official map saying that we're going to acquire the property, which clouds the title. We need to either get on with our interest in it or get off, and we need a plan on how we're going to deal with that going forward. So the intent is to direct staff to study and bring back a recommendation. If it is for the city and the village to have that right of way, so be it, then we withdraw our official mapping.
okay, Supervisor Johnson.
I'm not seconding for this reason. We're looking at moving this forward, and the next step is having those conversations. And it's purely a statement of intent. We're not giving up anything. We're not doing anything other than giving Mr. Griesbach clarification he needs to move forward. I don't think we need to go into the weeds with the technicality of where we need to go. Let's keep it simple, let's keep it clean, and give him the direction and the leeway he needs to go forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Supervisor Christensen.
Excuse me, I have to agree with Supervisor Johnson. I think this is all included in the original motion that, yes, go ahead and start speaking. Thank you.
All right, so we have an amendment, but no second at this time. And so the amendment, there is no second. All right, the amendment fails. Therefore, now we're going back. We have a motion and a second on the floor. And just, again, housekeeping, Kendra or Jim, do you see if Supervisor Gums is wanting to weigh in at all? Make sure that we're including him? Okay, all righty. So with that, thank you for your patience. So that we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. Thank you all for a very good discussion. And with that, we will now move to agenda item 4B, use of ATV, UTV on county highway system. And this again will be the commissioner leading off the discussion. We've got a lot of great information in the packets, and I know we're going to be keeping Kendra busy pulling things up, so thanks.
So what we had determined that we're going to look at for the roadways is, first off, and most important, we want to make the microphone.
Madam Chair, we can't hear anything.
With the policy that is in your packet today,
Can you hear now, Supervisor Mask?
the policy. in
Whoever
front
was
of-
speaking
That was,
before Mr. Griesbach, we could not hear.
okay, so let us know, we can hear you. Can you hear Commissioner Griesbach?
I'm talking now, here I'll go. I believe the should be in your packet, the policy that we have put together for the ATV, UTV routes on the road. What we took a look at was, first and foremost, making the road safe for both ATV, UTVs, and everybody out there. The intent was to establish an all-terrain ATV routes on portions of Marathon County roads with the consideration revolving around recreation, connection to trails, and weight against possible dangers, public health, and the terrain and traffic densities, and history of automobile accidents. So what we're looking at doing is changing our policy around a little bit, where right now, we would, currently, the town of Cleveland, seeing there's some Cleveland folks here, town of Cleveland applies for this, a small section of road being open. We would take a look at, before this even gets going, what roads do you feel that should be open? Are we gonna base it on traffic volumes? Give us some direction of what you would like. I put together some points. Traffic volumes, what we would look at is traffic volumes, the sheriff's department's concerns, accident rates. Are there other alternatives? Are there school zones or special consideration areas? Are there vertical or horizontal alignments? Are there a lot of commercial trucks? The highways within the Wausau metropolitan area, the MPO, would not be considered. There was a map included in your packet what that MPO area is, basically the roads around Wausau. And also, this committee spoke about any roads within a municipality not open for ATV, UTV use would not be considered. So after the committee decides what we would like to have open, instead of having the application process open year-round, we would publish a map once a year. Applications due in last Friday of January. We would publish that map in beginning of March, saying here are the roads that are open for the year. And at that point, if there's a consideration to open up another segment, that'd be looked at the following year. So we'd only open up roads once a year. But the roadways that we would open, depending on what this committee decides, would not just be the small segments, it would be a greater area of the roads. So what I guess in front of you today is, if you look at this map and under considerations, what, the very top one is ADT. What ADT would this committee like to consider? And are there any other considerations, mainly safety factors, listed below that you would want us to consider before we'd open it up? So the thought process is, we would have this conversation today. We would put some maps forward for you. I would work with Corp Council rewriting the ordinance. There are some things out there right now that do with speed, and I was actually in Madison this past week. There's about 3 or 4 things were testified this last week at hearings, all pertaining to ATV, UTV. They hope they have an answer on that by the end of the year. We also have the question in front of the committee, which was brought up a few times, was hours of operation. So if you would give us some direction of where you'd like us to go, we could have a draft ordinance and some maps made up and put those together for your consideration, for the 2022 mapping.
Okay, Supervisor Dickinson.
So we went from some ATV clubs coming here several months ago looking for a little more access to a document which says we're going to do once a year opening up of roads. Submissions are only once a year. Then we're going to wait a couple months to review. Then we're going to wait a couple months to get all those approved. I think what's happening here is this is government stepping in and trying to kind of lord over people to try to put process in which they think is well-intentioned, but really is just doing nothing more than lording over people. I don't think this draft is useful at all. You just look at some of the things in here. It really, to me, is these considerations is, again, just the county saying, you know, yeah, maybe we don't really want you to just drive those ATVs and just enjoy your little bit of freedom and liberty that you have left. It just doesn't make any sense. All these people are looking for, these hundreds of people who have come forward, is an increase of hours of operation, which is legal under statute, and they're looking for some more roads open. They're already driving on roads now. But what we want to do is we want to make the process harder for them instead of easier. And that's just the fact. So I really don't understand why we have this restrictive document in front of us when all we were looking for was really a simple vote on some of these matters. So I don't know how you expect me to react. I mean, if I were to make a motion, I would simply make a motion to increase the hours of operation 24/7. But I would compromise that we do that 5 a.m. to 12 a.m. And then we can just start moving forward than looking at this document. But I'll hold that motion at this time.
Thank you. Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the contrary, when I look at what's in front of this board, it's a vast expansion of roadways available. Contrary to the perception of it being constricted, and it also takes into account that the highway commissioner and the highway staff has a little more, has their regular duties on a daily basis, and it would make more sense. It would be some consistency. I would go a little bit farther and say, let's establish a highway count, a car count that we can live with, and then let's tell the townships, anything that's below this count, you can have local control over, and you can designate an ATV route if you want. And let them deal with it. They're closest to the folks that are asking the questions. They have better input. The folks have more access to them than they do to us meeting once a month. So I think we should consider that. Let's find a level of traffic that we're comfortable with, that's safe. And I'm sure we can do that, which will open up hundreds of times more access to county roads than is currently available. I mean, as far as road miles. I mean, because right now it is very limited. And I don't see this as limiting freedom, it's increasing the freedom, and reviewing it yearly is just, by the county, is just pragmatic. It's not limiting anybody, it's not hurting anybody, it's giving a vast network of availability to folks based on a preset criteria, and we're not reviewing and using up staff time to review a half-mile section here and a half-mile section there. So I think this is a very reasonable approach to doing it, which grants significantly more access to county roads, which I have no problem with. I think if there are low traffic counts, it's safe, great, open them up. And we can talk about hours as a separate time, but I think this, as a starting point, is a great leap forward from considering segment by segment by segment. And I'm sure the ATV, UTV riders would appreciate some consistency and some knowledge that, hey, we're gonna be able to get from point A to point B. We're gonna have those arterial county roads that maybe aren't used a lot by cars, but they can now use them, which would be a good thing. I would think, and I'm sure we'll get input from the various groups, riding groups, and those who enjoy that, which we should have. So I think this is a tremendous starting point. I think it's gonna expand access greatly, and we can talk about hours of operation, but as always, safety is gonna be a big factor. And if there are problems, if it is problematic, or if there are crashes, we can always revisit it and tighten it back up. But I think this is a great starting point, and we need to have that discussion, and we need input on what the highway counts are At what point does it become more of a safety hazard with how many vehicles? Because that's not something that we just instinctively know. That's something there's probably data on that we would need to make an informed decision. So, and that, like I said, all you have to do is look at these maps and look at where those purple lines go. If 750 cars a day is not a great risk, that opens up a whole bunch of the county roads to ATV, UTV use. And again, I'd have no problem with that as long as it's not creating an undue risk. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Christensen, I know you have some thoughts on this.
Well, I think opening up to 1,500 cars or less per day is the way to go. It would open up 95% of the highways in Marathon County the way it looks here. I don't see a problem with it. Everybody I talk to is in favor of this. I have not had anybody speak against this, so, excuse me. And the hours of operation, I think, should be opened up. It's this hour, excuse me, this hour after sundown, an hour before sunrise, it's just not working. People want to go out for a fish fry in the evening. There's no reason that we can't extend this to at least 10 or 11 o'clock in the evening. So I'm going to make a motion that let's open this up to 1,500 cars or less a day. And I think the hours of operation, we can sort of negotiate that and come to a better understanding of that. Thank you.
I would second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Supervisor Robinson.
How do we reconcile those segments of road that are above and below? You've got, is it by segment? So you've got some roads that, you look at WWK, you've got roads in, N, in Red Mountain. How do we reconcile that? I heard the Metropolitan Planning Organization area, the urban area, but how do we reconcile those roads so that if you've got at the corner of X and Y, 1,501 vehicles, and at one corner down, you're 1,499, how do we reconcile that in the same highway?
Supervisor Dickinson.
And there's the problem. So on one hand, what we say, if we say, let's open up all the roads, well, then we want to restrict by how many cars. And then we say, well, let's restrict by how many vehicles. Then we say, well, what about all the segments? See, you see what we're doing here? This is great. This is really a good insight for everybody. We are trying to have this huge oversight over something which is really very simple. You can either open up the roads and just say, let people have at it, and you can, even the ATV clubs have offered up certain segments of roads, certain actually county roads, X, K, I believe are some of them. I have a couple, I think there are 4 that are written down. And we can just say, those are non-negotiable. You do not go. They're willing to agree to that. And then you can say you can go everywhere else, and then we can handle that very simply. Or you can go the other route, and we can try to manage every segment by every traffic incident over every year or 15 months, and then we're going to look over here, and we're going to say, well, what do these people say in this municipality? That is what I'm talking about when government starts to get bigger than itself and forgets to do what it says on this piece of paper, which is serving the people. We're not serving the people. We're serving our process. We're serving our government structure. So I agree to the 1,500 so that we can move forward and get something, because it's clear that there isn't going to be this open all the roads, because somehow that seemingly is going to end the world. We're going to end up with people laying on the road like deer, during winter or something. Okay? There's this mindset of which is really just concerning to me. So I'll go with the 1,500. Now, I would actually, what I should do is maybe withdraw that, and maybe I should just say, ask for an amendment of that and say 5 a.m. to 12 a.m. plus the 1,500. Maybe that's really where we need to go, and then put it on the table, and vote for it and see where it leads. But quit wasting these people's time. My goodness. They've been coming here month after month asking for something. And what we're saying is no, you're going to have to wait till January. And you're going to have your local municipality to ask for it. And then we're going to wait for 2 months. And then we're going to vote and vote again. My goodness, folks. So I will just mention this. If there's any way that I can amend my second and we can move to that point, what I am looking for, and all the Robert's Rules folks can get in and talk about it, what I'm looking for is the 1,500, or you know what, no. I'll withdraw my second because I have a different motion than me.
Okay, just so I can keep up, and we do have Corp Counsel here. So we had a motion and a second, and now the second's been withdrawn, so the motion fails. Is that correct?
Unless there's another second.
All right. Unless, okay, is there another second? All right, if not, okay, Supervisor
And I
Dickinson.
would like to make a motion to open up all county roads from 5 a.m. to 12 a.m. with the restriction of what the ATV folks have given to me. Highway N, Highway X, Highway K, and there was a listing of Highway R. But we can, if we want to verify with them, we can have them speak to what they said. But that would be my motion.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
We have a second. Is there further discussion? Supervisor Johnson?
Madam, I have a significant problem with opening up all the roads. Okay, County Highway W goes right up from my neighborhood up Marshall Road. Under your proposal, that would be okay for ATV, UTV traffic. That's not safe. I know it's not. I know 0% of my constituents would be in favor of that. So I think it's overly broad. I think it's overly simplifying this and totally disregard, quite frankly, I think it's pandering, and I think it's unfortunate. We can open it up. We can give people the access they've been asking for, actually more than they've been asking for, without doing a blanket statement. We're not Lincoln County. We're not Taylor County. We have 137,000 residents. We don't have 12,000. It is a different county than the ones who are open on every county road. We have a different situation. I am not opposed to vastly expanding county road access, but spare me the crocodile tears about your freedoms and being so oppressed. I'm very tired of that.
Okay.
I apologize for that, Madam Chair. That was inappropriate. But nobody's oppressing anybody here. We're looking to expand it, and we're looking to do it in a reasonable and safe way. And hyperbole is not going to serve the purpose of coming up with good public policy. And I still think we do need information from the commissioner on what a safe level of traffic is. That is also our charge. Healthiest, safest, most prosperous. Safest is in there. So we need to consider that, and we need the information on that traffic breakdown of where that point is. If it's at 1,500, I have no problem supporting that. If it's at 1,000, I have no problem supporting that. Whatever makes sense. But I don't think we should throw it out there that we're going to just open everything up without enough information. And again, I want this to happen fast too. I want to be done with this. I want it to be usable, and I want it to be helpful to the folks out in the county or that want to use these roads. I want them to have access. But let's do it in a way where we don't have to bring it back all the time, which is why at the last month's meeting I suggested coming up with a comprehensive map, which is now in front of us. Let's find something that works, that makes sense. Blanketly saying that all county roads should be open from 5 a.m. to midnight is not well-considered or well-reasoned policy, in my opinion. And it leaves too many questions.
Okay.
So,
Thank you,
thank you.
Supervisor Johnson. I know, so we have Supervisor Gums on the line, and it looks like Supervisor Robinson, I think, did you have your hand up, Supervisor? And with everyone's permission, I see that Judy looks like she wants to speak, as long as she's here, and then at the end of all of that, staff has been listening, and then I would invite the commissioner to speak. So Supervisor Gums, you're up, sir.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Highway N was one of my concerns because that runs all the way over to Highway 13. So I can see Highway N, in the greater Wausau area, but out in the country is it's not quite going to work for me there. I did wanted to comment on one thing. I was up northern Wisconsin, Manitowoc Waters, Presque Isle here on Saturday, and I thought it was quite interesting. In the town of Winchester, they don't allow ATVs or UTVs at all. They're more of a silent sport type with tons of bike trails, tons of skiing trails, hiking trails. The next township over is wide open. And I asked an acquaintance up there, and he said, well, the reason for that is they felt that that the ATV and UTV actually go out and spend money, where the bike trails, the hikers, the healthy people, I don't know if you want to say that, they don't really drop no cash. So it was kind of an interesting conundrum, but I just thought that was interesting. But well, let's keep I'll end my comments and keep going from there. Thanks, Chair.
All right, thank you, Supervisor. And then I believe it was Supervisor Robinson.
I think I heard something from Jim about basically excluding the MPO service area from allowing ATV use, which would address both the issue that Supervisor Johnson raised and Supervisor Gums just raised relative to roads. I think it merits some consideration, but we've got, county trunks in the Marshfield area that have higher volumes in McMillan. Are they in or are they out? And parts are in and parts are out. And I think that we have an obligation as it relates to our county highway system to make sure that they're operated they're maintained and operated from a safety perspective. And one of the reasons we have this issue before us today is highway safety. And we've heard repeatedly in the past from the Sheriff's Department about concerns about mixed use and potential conflicts that arise. I think we're trying to work at a reasonable approach to deal with both access to the road and highway safety issues. And that may be uncomfortable and may be more difficult. I personally don't have a problem with the 1,500. I continue to be concerned about intermittent 1,500 average daily things. How do we reconcile those issues around Edgar, around Marshfield, around other communities? So you're going to have a stretch that doesn't allow it. How enforceable will that be? How clear is that? I think we just need to give it more thought. And so I can support raising, establishing a threshold, but I think we need to look at, does it apply to the metropolitan planning area, which is the immediate Wausau area? Does it apply in certain other cases where you've got that intermittent use? I guess I'm just not ready now to make that decision.
Thank you, Supervisor. And again, with the committee's permission, I'd like to invite Judy to speak. She's been waiting patiently. And so it probably best, Judy, if you want to come up and use the mic.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to speak. I've been here in the last 6 months as much as you guys have been, and I think there's an issue with understanding why we want the county roads open. I think a lot of you think that we're gonna be on them like the car traffic is, and we're not. We run 95% of the time on the weekends. Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, which is family time. We go out with how many riders we can get together. We go to a restaurant, we eat, we spend money for gas, sometimes 2, 3 times that we have to stop for gas, because we'll put on several hundred miles. We don't want to be able to run County Road, I'm just going to pick one, from where it starts by Mosinee all the way down to the end of the county, or however far north it starts. We don't want that. We don't want to be able to just say, okay, we can run on this highway now, so that's the only road we're going to use. That's not our purpose. We want to be able to go from point A, which might be a side country road that connects to a county road, maybe a mile or maybe a half a mile or whatever, up that county road to another side road that we can take. We don't run just the main road like you do when you're going to go grocery shopping in a car. So we want to be able to have access. It's just a connection point for us. And right now it's, okay, I can go a quarter mile on this road and there's a county road or a side road that's another half a mile up and I can't get to it. And I would rather run that side road, but because it's not in that section that's open, I can't get there. And a good example of that is say for instance, we want to ride, I don't know the town, I don't want to come to town. I don't think any rider on an ATV in a city that's the size of Marshfield and as busy as Marshfield, or Wausau and as busy as Wausau is, in their right mind, they would not want to come here. Not because we don't like coming here, but we don't want to do it on a small machine. We'll wait and bring our car and our truck and go grocery shopping or clothing shopping or whatever. We're out to have an enjoyable day out in the country in the fresh air, but we need access points. So if you want to say 1,500 cars, fine, eliminate your cities. It's easy to say, no, you can't drive through Marshfield. No, you can't drive through Edgar unless Edgar says, yeah, we don't have enough traffic on the weekend that it's not going to bother us. It's, work with the communities themselves and say, is it okay if we allow ATV, UTV traffic on Friday and Saturday and Sunday? During the week, we're not out there. I don't work because I'm old, but there a lot of us are still have jobs that we have to work that we don't have the time to be out there during the week. We enjoy it on the weekends where we can take our family and we can get our neighbors together. We can have 5, 6 machines in a row and we can go. Now we have to go into Shawano County and we can go to 8 different places within 5 miles once we get into Shawano County. So we're spending our money over there where I'm a lifelong resident here. I'd rather see the money spent here where it belongs. Marathon County is a big county. It's a great county. Wisconsin's a great state. Counties to the south that have huge cities have their county roads open for access points. So it's not a big crisis, and I think yous are pushing too much emphasis on daily traffic use when we're not going to be out there every day. So, thank you.
Thank you, Judy. All right. So, Commissioner, you've heard a lot of discussion. There's clearly a lot of opinions, deeply held viewpoints on this. And so you've heard the discussion. Can you give us some more of your thoughts at this time?
Well, following up with Ms. Robinson's concerns, yeah, I believe if you set it at the 1,500, the areas like you mentioned, Highway E down by Marshfield, that's just a segment that is close in because I know that segment down there has 3,000 cars a day on. There are some little segments that are kind of questionable. These maps are based off of DOT counts. So once in a while you'll see a little segment that might only be a 1 mile segment that's red. We would take a look at it. We feel that there's probably something wrong with those traffic counts. We wouldn't go strictly off of the counts that are out there. We would take a look at, example, I know there's a couple of them on here that, if you know where Highway C is down by the town of Bergen, there looks like there's about a half a mile stretch in there. For some reason, the traffic peaked. I have no idea why that would be. We'd open up that whole segment. We would take a look at it and make sense of the map. So that's what I would propose. If you want to go to 1,500 cars a day, again, I want this over. Everybody keeps saying they want it over before anybody. I want it over before anybody, believe me. I cannot go to the I can't go to the local establishments without hearing this, so I want it over also. So with that being said, you know, if we would say 1,500 cars a day, we could take a look at these maps, try to figure out these little segments and say, all right, these are the segments that, you know, we resolved. These are the segments or not, and we could have that map for you. So, you know, we would take a look at, you know, the MPO area. I feel strongly that we should probably not have those ATVs. And again, most of those roads were mentioned by the groups here, you know, the Highway K, the X, basically anything in the MPO, probably Highway N from Wausau to 107. So, and Highway N East, I don't know how far out of town we would go take a look at that. So there are some high volume traffic areas that, you know, I would say we'd want to stay away from. But, you know, if we want to go with the 1,500 cars, we could definitely make up a map. You basically have that map in front of you today, minus a few little segments that, again, we just gave this to Gary Hetzer and said, use the DOT council. A lot of those little segments we would clean up. It's the bigger segments. I know, for example, being from the area Highway C from 97 out to Roselvo, that's got like 3,000 cars a day on it. We probably would not want that open because it's so far over that 1,500.
Okay, thank you. So to Supervisor Dickinson and Supervisor Christensen, who made the motion in the second. Now, so here's my question. So in addition to the 1,500, okay, I'm starting to lose track. Did you keep the hours of operation in there, Supervisor?
Yeah, so the motion that I had made was the all county roads with a few county road exceptions.
Okay.
So I would have to withdraw that, and that also had the hours of operation. And then we would, in essence, have to then make a new motion for the 1,500, which I would include with the hours of operation from 5A to 12A. I would include that with that, because I think that's important. With then the review of segments that Commissioner Griesbach was talking about within that 1,500, correct? Right, because you had said that there were 1,500 you'd be okay with, but then there were certain segments in that that would have to be reviewed. Is that correct? Or did I miss it?
Correct. There's a couple of them in that 1,500 that they show like a half a mile segment that for some reason didn't fall in there. So we'd review all those and make sure there's nothing crazy going on.
So I then am withdrawing my motion.
I will withdraw my motion. I will defer to Supervisor Dickinson to make the motion. Thank you.
Okay.
So then we would be at the 1,500 with hours of operation 5A to 12A, and then the review of those areas that Commissioner Griesbach was talking about to identify certain segments to see if they could be added or not.
Okay, so we have a motion,
And I will second that.
and we have a second. Is there any further discussion? Supervisor Robinson, I think that means you want to speak.
Are you open to excluding the MPO service area?
I would include that under the review of Commissioner Griesbach, and he did mention that the MPO would be within that kind of review, so yes, I would. Is that?
Put that in your motion specifically?
Yes, I would put that in my motion for the MPO to not, to restrict the MPO.
So is the intent then is the intent of the motion to direct the commissioner to develop a plan to bring back to us that would include the hours of operation and a plan that would look at implementing the $1,500 to reconcile that intermittent, for lack of a better term, segments, so you don't have 1,501, 1,499. Is that the intent? And are we?
Sure.
Yeah.
My intent is to get something done as soon as possible. And so the way I would look at that is under that 1,500 threshold and the 5 a.m. to 12 a.m. are done with and then the MPO wouldn't be included, so that would be done. And then it's this other review that would be the plan that would come back. Now, if we feel like, I'll work with that. If we feel like that's not doable, if we want to just come back with an entire plan next month for vote, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
So then I would say my intent is come back with the final plan.
So therefore, are you amending a motion here, Supervisor, or I'm a little, help me out here.
I was simply,
Yes.
my intent is those items that I stated, is my motion for that to come back as a plan to
To
be
come
voted
back,
on.
okay, you've
Yes.
added, you've expanded your motion. And is the author of the second motion, or,
What do we need to change for a plan?
Okay.
We got it right here, 1,500 cars or less in 5 a.m. to 12 p.m. There's the plan. As simple as that. What do we need to have for another plan?
I think some of the, okay,
I mean, the
you
way it
raised the
sounds,
question, I don't know.
Commissioner Griesbach has agreed with this.
Yeah, the only thing we'd want to clean up are some of those segments that are questionable in there.
Okay,
So we want to clean those up, and the MPO area.
okay. I will go along with this, as long as we can do this next month and finalize this. We are getting, it's long enough. We've been doing with this all year, and we haven't come to an agreement. But I would really like an agreement next month. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Johnson?
I agree. I'd love to vote on this and move it on to the full county board next month. And just as a point of clarification, that's what it's going to take to actually put this into effect, it will take a vote of the entire board. So,
point.
I mean, all of the fine minutia we're putting into motions now really is, it's great discussion to have, but it does need to move forward next month. I agree. And that's why I want Commissioner Griesbach to have the leeway to come up with that final product, put it in front of us, we look at it, and we go thumbs up, thumbs down, and it moves on to the full board, because I suspect it'll be passed. And then the full board will either enact it or not. So I just wanted to clarify process. So looking at this, then in October, we will take it up, and if it passes, then later in October, because we always meet early, it would go to the full board. Is that correct? The Corp Council's nodding his head. I take that as a yes.
Good, that looks good.
Which means we would have resolution of this by mid-October.
Okay, good. Thank you,
Thank you.
Supervisor Johnson. And just one, again, because there's been a lot here, so I'm needing help from Supervisor Dickinson and Corp Counsel. Just to clarify, have you withdrawn a motion, or are you making a new motion? Are we needing consensus here? Just make it crystal clear to me
We
here.
did have a new motion.
Okay, new motion.
It was myself and Supervisor Christensen.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries, and Commissioner will be busy to prepare for next month. Thank you all. Thank you, guests. Thank you, everyone, for great discussion. We will now move on to number 5, operational functions required by statute, ordinance, resolution, or policy, a 2021 Marathon County Bridge Aid Resolution, and Mr. Lang will be presenting this.
Thank you. In your packets, you guys had the resolution listing on there with the total project cost and then the appropriation for bridge aid. The second page was more of the supporting data that had a listing of all the projects and their estimated costs at this time. We have one kind of different project in there with the city of Wausau. That was a larger bridge project that was completed last year. And that one we're paying off over, we have an agreement to pay that off over a 4-year period with them. So it gives us a little bit of leeway in there to adjust that final number, which is why you guys see that exact number of $960,000 instead of a project number to the penny. So I guess if there's questions on it, this is a process. Usually we do a lot of the work internally with staff, review them and process them, and then if you guys have questions on them, we can run through them. Otherwise, all of the listing is included in there, and then the resolution has all your projects on it.
Supervisor Robinson.
I will move to approve the bridge aid, culvert and bridge aid projects.
Thank you. We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second? Or a second from Supervisor Dickinson. Any further discussion? If not, Supervisor Christensen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I'm town chair in the town of Ringgold, and we have a project on here. Do I need to recuse myself?
Corp Counsel?
No.
All right, there's your answer. Thank you for being here. All right, with that, all in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you all. With that, we'll be moving, 6B, the update from IT Director. Jerry is not here. All of his information was in the packet. Are there any questions on that? If not, thank you. I'm sure you've had a chance to look that over. So we will move on then to 5C, and that's the Commissioner's report.
In the interest of time, it was included in the packet. If anybody has any questions, I'd be willing to answer those at this time.
All right, thank you. And then D, Camp Phillips, Ross Avenue intersection improvement, back to the Commissioner.
Thank you. This one probably needs a little more explanation. The ICE report was included in your packet. We did sit down with the people from the Village of Weston, staff, and to discuss this. And looking at this, why don't you go almost to the last page, to the layouts. What the conversation was, what we want to do down there to the Ross Avenue, Camp Phillips intersection, that particular intersection we're having issues with, and it has outgrown its current alignment with the traffic. So we sat down with the village and started discussion with those of what we want to do. First off, this is going to be a joint project, 50-50 split with the village. Right now, we had discussed the two alternatives that was laid out in the report: a signalized intersection or a roundabout. What we took a look at was probably the safety aspect of it. Shows that it should be a roundabout. Some of the things that came out in the study is the service life. The initial construction for a signalized intersection would be it would be cheaper, but the roundabout lasts about 25 years. The life expectancy of the signalized intersection is only 10 years. The annual maintenance costs on the intersection as a roundabout is between $4,500 and $6,000, compared to $6,000 and $8,000 for a signalized intersection, along with the safety of the intersection. So at this point, we are going to pursue a roundabout at that intersection. What we're going to kind of look at doing is the county's going to take the lead for the contract for design to get those plans to a 70% on the shelf. The village is going to work for the construction funding and real estate. Some of the real estate is there on their own land, which we'd be looking for a land swap. We had talked about a few meetings ago with the Village of Weston, where they have that easement. So this is what we had talked about. We knew we were going to need right away in the future for that. So they will work on the real estate with a private entity, the school, and themselves will work about that. The construction right now, we don't have anything set in stone. It's going to be based on funding level. It's anticipating we're going to apply for STP funds in 2023 with construction in 25 or 26. That could be accelerated, if there are some stimulus money or road to recovery funds that ever come available. We'll keep working on different funding. So the funding, again, is going to be a 50-50 split, but, our hope is that the 50-50 is only going to be a 20% cost of that. So, if it's an 80-20 split between federal and state, at the end of the day, the county be paying 10%, the village would be paying 10%, and the outside funding would be paying the other 80%. So we are working on that. Some of the jurisdiction topics we need to still work out with the Village of Weston is like the storm sewer, sidewalks, trails, lights, and approaches. So we'll include that in the MOU once we get this document down the road a little farther. So that is the update with the County X and Ross Avenue intersection. At this time, Kevin and I can answer any questions you may have.
Supervisor Robinson.
Has the neighborhood been engaged in the discussions of the development of the roundabout? Because it will displace on the west side, probably some potentially homes.
No, if you look at the map that's on the screen
Will it
right
not?
now, they're very small impact as far as the right of way. There will be a public involvement meeting at some point, but right now in that northwest corner, I believe that is a storage units up in there, and we have just a small parcel of land being purchased from them. The majority of land is actually coming from the Village of Weston's property.
Okay, any other questions? If not, thank you, Commissioner. With that, number 7, announcements. Future meetings and agenda items, October 7th, 2021, monthly committee meeting. And just as a note, Vice Chair McEwen will be attending that meeting, and there'll be information in the packet, but he's going to be meeting with the committee just to review the status of the role of the Infrastructure Committee and implementation thus far in the strategic plan. So look for that. B, the 2021 Fall Legislative Meeting is taking place October 29th, 2021. Yes.
With the legislative meeting, I will need a head count for that. A lot of you have been on this committee previously, but I believe Mr. Dickinson is probably the only one that has not. Pre-COVID, we would meet with our local legislators and talk about topics that are at hand. Right now, we have quite a few safety topics we are working with legislators with right now, so I encourage you, possibly if you are available, Monday, October 29th to attend that. Please let me know here by the end of the month if you can attend that so we can get that registered. I will be we are hosting again. It will be at the Holiday Inn in Stevens Point. So I have a yes from Mr. Robinson.
And Supervisor Johnson, I'm just checking my calendar, 29th?
Yes.
All right. So for other committee members, Christensen? Yes?
Christensen.
Okay.
And the time on that again is?
Registration usually begins about 8 o'clock, breakfast 8:30. Legislators come on board. We start a meeting at 9, and we like to be out there before 11:30.
All right.
So at this point, I have Mr. Christensen, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Johnson.
I need to check my calendar. I think I'm out of town that weekend. It's the quorum? Yeah, okay. So if Supervisor Dickinson, is that something that you would consider, or are you checking it? Okay, so you can get back to Jim if that works for you. Okay, thank you for bringing that up, Jim. And with that, number 8, adjournment. We have a motion from Supervisor Christensen. Would anyone like to second that? Really?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Johnson. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right. Thank you, everyone. I know it's been an extended meeting, but a lot of great discussion. Enjoy the rest of your day.
I think we can get something that works for everybody. So Jeffrey, what? What? If it stays in the county, and we got a think about that, but we're never getting use it, John. But if the city develops it or widens it for the. All we're saying is we're abandoning it. But my purpose was to get, we're not doing anything.